Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Council. I am Councillor James Caston, Chairman of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I will be chairing this meeting today. May I first remind you all of some domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it's safe to do so. Please switch all laptops and mobile phones onto silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. And I'll move to the agenda. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Carter, Haddingham, Phillips and Scarf and Pratt.
I'll take this opportunity to say that Councillor Pratt recently had a son, and we all wish him well on behalf of Mid-Suffolk District Council. And I think I'm very happy for him, and it will be good to see him here again soon. Right, so item 2 is declarations of interest by the councillors. So please note that the monitoring officer has granted dispensations to the directors of the council's companies. So are there any other declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Item 3, MC 2211, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of June 2022 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? No. Could I have a proposer? Councillor Flatman. And a seconder? Councillor Geek. So what we'll do with this is we'll show hands for approval of the minutes. So all those in favour? So that's carried. Thank you. Item 4, the Chairman's announcements. I refer you to paper MC 2212 for noting. Please note that I was unable to attend the Ipswich Mayor's at home as I'd already begun work on the farm for harvest. So thank you. And on to item 5, the leader's announcements. I'd like to invite Councillor Morley to present her update. Any points of clarification can be raised afterwards, but we will stick to points of clarification, not questions on anything else. Thank you. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a relatively short period of time since our last full council meeting, and so I've focused my announcements this month on our recent successes. However, I do want to start by praising our emergency services, and in particular the Suffolk Fire Service, who have been under such pressure and been so fantastic during this recent spell of extreme heat. It has been a busy few weeks of significant milestones for our companies and council projects, with the Range being confirmed as the first occupier at Gateway 14, and completion of the first phase of 32 new homes and a new co-op store at Chambers Green in Needham Market. A further 60 homes will follow as part of phase 2, which is expected to start later in the year. Cabinet have also agreed to fund the development of detailed designs and public engagement for a potential new wellbeing and leisure hub for Mid-Suffolk. The project will provide new and improved facilities for a wide range of sports, leisure and health organisations, all brought together across a single site in Stowmarket. The hot weather has coincided with the start of school summer holidays, and I'm really proud that we are able to provide, alongside our partners, an array of activities. Explore Outdoor will again be getting children out and about in nature, while Kinetic Science will be encouraging children to learn through fun with some hands-on experiments. There will also be a variety of cooking lessons provided by the Food Museum, Explore Outdoor and Debenham Sports and Leisure Centre, all supporting our ambition to combat holiday hunger. There will also be sessions for swimming, football, arts and crafts, dodgeball and filmmaking workshops. And free places are available for all of the activities for those most in need. We are continuing to tackle issues in relation to housing and homelessness. Through our newly adopted empty homes policy, we will be reducing the number of long-term empty properties in mid-Suffolk. This includes our empty homes renovation loan. This is an interest-free loan of up to £20,000 to help owners to renovate properties that have been empty for more than 6 months. I'm also really pleased that alongside Councillor Hicks and Councillor Passmore, as part of the Suffolk Public Sector Leaders Group, we have been able to create a new climate change fund. The £150,000 Suffolk Climate Action Community Match Fund is available for all not-for-profit organisations looking to deliver community-based carbon reduction projects. These could include improving the energy efficiency of buildings, promoting walking and cycling, using sustainable recycled materials, and raising awareness of climate change through events. Looking ahead to later in the year, our second Innovation Awards has been launched. The awards are a celebration of all types of innovation across businesses in all sectors. It showcases how our businesses are using innovative approaches to deliver their products and services, ranging from customer services to new technologies. There are 10 categories across a range of sectors that celebrate the best of innovation in the high street: healthcare, construction, customer service and foods. And there are also awards for young innovators, innovation in future technology, and the Business Innovator of the Year. Applications for the awards close on the 14th of August, so please do encourage and support the business in your awards to get involved. I want to take the opportunity to mention the Local Government Association peer review report, which has just been published on our website. The report describes how we are punching above our weight and praises our ambition and delivery. However, we will not rest on our laurels, as we all want to be even better and to keep improving our services and the quality of life for all our residents. This has never been more important given the cost of living crisis and climate emergency. And alongside the report, we have therefore published an action plan based upon the peer review's recommendations. And finally, I want to confirm the changes I have made to Cabinet and welcome some new colleagues to the senior leadership team. As you will be aware, Councillor Harry Richardson has taken over from Councillor Gerard Brewster as Deputy Leader of the Council. Harry has also become the Portfolio Holder for Economy, and Councillor Julie Flatman will be both Portfolio Holder for Communities and also for Wellbeing. Gerard remains on Cabinet without a portfolio. I'm really grateful to Gerard for his support both as Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder, and I'm sure you will all join me in sending our best wishes to Gerard's family. As councillors know, we are currently recruiting to 3 roles within the senior leadership team. In the interim, we have appointed temporary support for all 3 roles. So I would like to welcome Anita Kukuli as Director of Operations and Di Robinson as Director of Communities and Wellbeing. Chris Stratford will also be joining us during August as Director of Housing. And interviews for the permanent appointments to these roles will be happening in early September. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. So on to item 6, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Item 7, questions by the public in accordance with the council procedure rules.
None received.
And 8, questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
So we move on to item 9, MC 2213, Capital Investment Fund Company, CIFCO Capital Limited, Business Trading and Performance Report 2021 to 2022 and Business Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Gould to update the Council on this item. Councillor Gould.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have withdrawn the CIFCO business plan from tonight's agenda following the cancellation of the Babergh council meeting earlier this week. It will be rescheduled to be considered by both council shareholders in September meetings. Whilst this is unfortunate, I am pleased that the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee had an opportunity to publicly scrutinise the business plan last month and that the committee confirmed that it was satisfied with the plan and the performance of CIFCO. Councillors may also recall that the CIFCO business plan was deferred in the September council meeting to the September council meetings last year due to the pandemic, and that was without significant impact. A redacted copy of the business plan and the covering report has been published, and should councillors have any queries prior to September, then please do let me know in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. So that takes us on to item 10. Yes. I'm not taking questions on this. Sorry. Item 10, MC 2214, Gateway 14 Limited, extension to Peak Loan Facility. I would like to invite Councillor Gould to introduce paper MC 2214 and to move recommendations in the report. Councillor Gould.
Okay, thank you very much, again, Chair. I'm delighted to be presenting this report to the Council today at a time when significant progress is being made at Gateway 14 in Stowmarket. The infrastructure works started on site in April and are progressing well, with the future shape of the business park being revealed more each day. Gateway 14 Limited has also recently announced the first occupier for the site, The Range, one of the fastest growing retailers in the UK. Gateway 14 will deliver a BREEAM Excellent, high quality distribution centre for The Range, creating 1,650 new jobs. This is a significant investment for The Range and is integral to their expansion plans. This first occupier aligns well with Gateway 14 and Freeport East aspirations for development, delivering sustainable, high-quality buildings and jobs. In December 2020, the Council approved total development funding of £37.9 million to deliver the development of Gateway 14. This budget assumed infrastructure costs of £16.2 million and a delivery over a 12 to 15-year period. Now, since that date, two key factors have come into play. The first is the considerable cost inflation in the construction market due to the pandemic, to Brexit, and the war in Ukraine. The second factor, which can be considered a positive, is the need to accelerate delivery, given the immensely strong interest in the development and given the timescales associated with Freeport East. Now, the purpose of this report is because additional funding is needed to complete the infrastructure works as a single phase and to simultaneously progress other stages of the development, such as reserved matters planning application for the range. The options to rephase the infrastructure works and alternative funding sources are set out within section 2 of the report, and those represent a full consideration of the options. I do hope that and expect the Council will approve the recommended option to increase the peak debt threshold, as this is the only option that does not interrupt or delay the continuing progress at Gateway 14, and I commend it to you. We have here the Director of Assets and Investment, and possibly online Sir Christopher Howarth. I don't know whether that's... maybe. Oh, both of those will be, or one at least, will be delighted to assist with any questions that councillors have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Could I get a seconder for that? Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very happy to second this. And also, I will reserve my right to speak at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brewster. We will now move to questions. Whilst councillors can ask as many questions as they like, I would prefer if they kept to the 3 questions and keep them as blunt and as to the point as they possibly can, so we can move through to debate. Thank you very much. I'll take questions now. Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Peter. Just a question. On 5.1, it says that the range anticipates 1,650 jobs in the region. In our press releases and other press statements, it suggests there's a similar number of jobs this will bring about on Gateway 14. Could we please clarify the statement? Is this number of jobs going to be on the range at Gateway 14 or in the region? Because obviously the two are a larger geographical area.
To address that. Thank you.
The Director for Assets and Investments.
Thank you, councillors, for that question. I can confirm the 1,650 jobs will be at Gateway 14, so it's my style of writing that's probably caused that confusion in the report, so I apologise for that.
Then, Chair, with your indulgence, could we amend the report to accurately reflect the correct position?
Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the report. Just with regards to the overall amount being asked for here, it implies in the report that it isn't dependent on the range being on this site. But I just wondered if firstly, we could have absolute clarity of that, that if we were to approve this peak debt facility, the increase in that it isn't dependent on having a business that's already signed up for the site. And secondly, also, could we just confirm what the basis is that the range are now signed up for, if that's a written contract or if it's something that they could potentially change if needs be, just to give us some certainty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
I suspect the latter point there may be some commercial caution to be applied, but again, I'll ask the Director to address.
The Director for Assets and Investments.
Thank you, councillor, for that question. So in relation to the contracts with the range, yes, I can confirm that contracts have been exchanged. They're conditional contracts, but the conditions are based on the performance of Gateway 14, so the range doesn't have the ability to walk away. So, for instance, the Gateway 14 needs to secure the detailed planning consent for the delivery of the new facility. And I'm really sorry, I've forgotten your first question.
Thank you. It was just in terms of, just to confirm or to clarify that what we're agreeing today, or potentially agreeing today, is not dependent on the range being part of the deal.
Thank you. Yes, it is to confirm that the additional funds are required regardless of whether the range proceeds or not, and so the report is phrased with recommendation, so there's no interdependency with the range transaction.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the paper marked confidential. Is that give us problems or not?
Well, we can go into closed session if you... do you really need to...
I wanted to refer to sort of direction of change of numbers. I don't want to refer necessarily to the figures themselves. But,
Right. If you ask the question without giving details, then the Director for Assets and Investments can decide whether that needs to go into closed session. But we do want to try to do everything in the open if we can.
I understand that, obviously, and support that. It was merely that the numbers for utilities seem to have increased quite dramatically, and the numbers for highways issues have gone down substantially, and yet both seem to be impacted by the same set of issues that were mentioned in the main paper, Brexit costs and all the rest of it. So it seems somewhat strange. Could you explain that?
Thank you, Councillor Field. You did very well there. And the Director for Assets and Investments.
Thank you. So I can answer that in general terms in open session. So the budget was set in 2020. It was an indicative budget. We have since 2020 undertaken much more detailed due diligence, which has led to some increases in costs for specific reasons with regard to utilities, and some reduction in costs in terms of highways. So the general answer is to do with the difference between setting budgets at a fairly early stage in a project against more detailed budgets once that detailed due diligence has been completed. I'm more than happy in closed session to explain a little bit more around that, but I don't think it would be appropriate to do so in open session, or indeed if you'd like to have a conversation outside this meeting, I'd be more than happy to share further details as well.
Thank you for coming up. I don't think it's necessary to go into more detail. It would be good if the reasons you just mentioned were recorded in the main document as part of the reason for change.
Thank you. And any further questions? Councillor Warboys.
Excuse me, sitting down, I've sort of come unplugged otherwise. Yeah, just a question. The range has on its website sort of claims of how it's working towards meeting climate change. We have got quite specific targets for Gateway 14 with regard to meeting the climate crisis, net zero. Has the contract has sort of been signed and is perhaps conditional? Is it fully compliant with our set of environmental standards?
Director, Assets and Investments.
Thank you, Councillor. So we've been really pleased to work with the range in regard to the first occupier of Gateway 14, because they share our aspirations with regard to delivering a highly sustainable building, and we are working together to achieve more than our requirements as we've set out. I suppose in answer, yes, we will have exceeded our basic threshold in terms of what we will deliver from an environmental perspective in the delivery of this building, and we're exploring currently how we can go even further in that regard.
Thank you very much, and that's the end of questions. So we'll now move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once, and for 3 minutes we will be timing this. So who would like to go first? Councillor Eburn.
someone needs to start. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say that I've always supported Gateway 14 because I'm very pleased that we're investing in our local area and that investment will be, it will impact our local residents in lots of different ways. So from the actual investment, from jobs they might get and so on and so forth. So just to say up front that I will be supporting this recommendation. And also I would like to just thank the Assistant Director for her work on this, especially in bringing forward a company to become the first one on this site, because I think you obviously need one for all others to follow, as it were. But I would like to say that, you know, there is work going on and, you know, obviously continually going on. And I think it's very, very important that that work pushes as far and as fast as possible, especially in terms of the environmental credentials. This is a site that we own. We need it to be as exemplar as possible. We need to show others what we can do. And we need to ensure that in terms of all of the elements of it, and from everything, all the sustainable bit, whether we can generate power for those organisations on it through solar panels and so forth, making sure that we're improving the biodiversity on that site, so that local residents, when it's obviously there's going to be a stage of building works which is going to cause disruption for an awful lot of people, but that the end result will be something that is better and is really worthwhile. So I would just urge that we really push and keep pushing to make it the best it can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have no problem at all in supporting this. I think it's an excellent development, and the sooner we can push it forward with great speed, because we're all aware of some other fairly major infrastructure projects elsewhere in the county that will be taking place fairly soon. And I say that in all seriousness because the pressure it will put on construction and so on is going to clearly increase. The other thing is I think it will act as a magnet for greater prosperity, not just for us here in mid-Suffolk, because of its link to the Freeport, which I think has got enormous potential, and we need to get our shoulders well and truly fair and square behind the wheel and get on and give it a large shove so that we can actually get that inward investment, expand the tax base and the economic growth we've got as much as possible. But of course, and I do agree with Rachel there, done in the right way with the right credentials, so it's something we are all proud of, fit for purpose for the future. And that was one of the things we certainly discussed in detail at our planning committee meeting a few months ago, I think it is now. So more power to your elbow, so let's just get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Passmore. Any further comments? Right, okay. Councillor Gould, would you like to add anything?
Just very briefly, if I may, Chair, and to thank colleagues for the positive comments that have been made. Yes, the whole intention, as I said in my introduction, is to enable us to press on with this to meet the demand. And I think Councillor Passmore makes a very good point about what will be growing demand within this county for construction resources to push ahead with major infrastructure projects. I think that's a point that is well made. Thanks to Councillor Eborn for her points. I would mention that Emily, along with her peers, are now quite properly described as directors. I think that's entirely right. So just to a minor point of correction. I think one of the things that, since I took over this portfolio, has become increasingly apparent to me is the convergence between commercial success and environmental interest. And we see this, at one point, we might have thought that these two are somehow in tension, but increasingly they come to the same thing. And what has been said about the range absolutely demonstrates this, that they recognise their long-term commercial success rests on their ability to deliver on low carbon and environmental agenda. So thank you to colleagues for their comments. I hope that now translates into a positive vote as per the recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing blue for councillors to cast their vote.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a fairly complex paper. It's got a lot in it, and I would like, first of all, to thank Christine Thurlow for all the work she and her team have put into carrying out this review and to documenting everything. I also, I think on this occasion, need to thank my Babergh counterpart, who has taken the opportunity to slightly condense the opening remarks, which are still nonetheless extensive. But I do thank Councillor Arthey for. He doesn't know that I'm using this particular version, but I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he won't mind. Anyway, the Sill Expenditure Framework and Communication Strategy were originally agreed and adopted by both councils in March 2018. There have been annual reviews by the Joint Member Panel, which have led to changes being adopted to the Sill Expenditure Framework and Communication Strategy in March 2019, April 2020 and March 2021. It was also agreed that a further review would take place this year. The report in front of you today is a result of that work undertaken by the cross-council, cross-party Joint Member Panel. The proposed changes are listed in full in paragraph 4.5 of the report, but I will highlight the main points. First, there are changes regarding eligibility for infrastructure, which reduces the carbon footprint, including district parish heating systems for communal buildings within parishes. Currently, EV charging points are supported for 100% of the project costs. However, now suggested that it should be up to 100%, accepting that other funding may be available and that carbon reduction heating systems should be eligible for district Sill funding where there are improvements or upgrades or additionality in community buildings, but not for repair or maintenance. Next, there's increased clarity around Sill bids from organisations that charge admittance. We will continue to fund infrastructure projects for museums, but we will not fund public open space and place-based projects if an admittance fee is charged. We believe such facilities should be capable of being used by all without charge. Next, we have changes to the project inquiry forms which aid project development. And amongst the improvements to the website, we want to include maps of both districts showing locations of completed Sill projects, along with details and before and after pictures.
We expect consistent arrangements for use of ring-fenced monies using suggested catchment areas for proposed infrastructure for schools, rail and health hubs. Where infrastructure delivery is proposed through the submission of Sill bids, the financing of these bids, when recommended to Cabinet or through delegated decisions, will be undertaken by using ring-fence monies first, supplemented by the use of strategic or local infrastructure funds, secondly, if necessary. We've reviewed the current £75,000 threshold and 75% of total costs for Sill bids submitted by the community, and we're proposing that this should increase to £100,000 and 75% of total costs of the project to address rising infrastructure and materials costs. Next comes funding for cycling and footpaths. Projects in the LCWIP, IDP and IFS. We're suggesting here a pilot period of schemes with the new community threshold of £100,000 and proactive work to bring LCWIP schemes forwards, with the outcomes informing the next review. We want to encourage greater spending of Sill, including neighbourhood Sill. We want to continue with current proactive approaches towards expenditure and progression of Sill bids, and, in addition, produce capital project work plans for the next 5 years with other infrastructure providers such as Health and Suffolk County Council Waste to address infrastructure priorities. We will monitor, alongside the IFS, where neighbourhood Sill spend is occurring, and, if necessary, carry out focused discussion with the parish about capital Sill projects that are underway. We will offer targeted website advice with specific guidance, note, to aid project development and the development of PIP's parish investment infrastructure plans. And we will look to the use of neighbourhood Sill on a case-by-case basis and monitor this for the next review of the Sill expenditure framework. We agreed to keep the Sill expenditure framework under review. I've mentioned how some of our proposals will feed into the next review, and we are suggesting another Sill expenditure framework review, the 5th, should occur whilst bid round 10 is underway in October 2022, so that any revisions are adopted before bid round 11 occurs in May 2023. Now, moving on to the Sill Expenditure Framework Communication Strategy, which you'll find at Appendix B, we will continue with regular briefing sessions for members and parish councils in line with the requirement of the communication strategy, but increase the number of events from 2 to 3 each year, with members also being invited to the parish events so that they can accompany their parishes if they wish. And I refer you to paragraph 4.6 of the report on this. And finally, that the joint member panel remains in place to inform the 5th Sill Expenditure Framework Review. So, Chair, I'm proposing the recommendations at paragraph 3, which I won't read out to you, but I will look for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Flatman.
Reserve my right to speak afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. We'll now move to questions. Who would like to start? Or Councillor Wellham, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the engagement and briefings with local people. I wonder if it would be a good idea to invite village hall committees and the like to these briefings, not just the parish council, because quite often parish councils are, I wouldn't say a law to themselves, but they're not always the best way to get information out to the parish, particularly if it's a village hall committee or a community group. So I just wondered if the invitations could be broadened a bit.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. As this is cross-party, of course, we need to refer that to, sorry, not cross-party, cross-council as well. We would want to refer that to my Babergh counterpart. But I can't see an objection to that, Councillor Wellham. I think it's a good idea. You're absolutely right. The parish councillors are not always the best medium for transmitting information through to the community. But may I ask, I mean, we've got Christine Thurlow here, who, on any matters of detail, or any matters at all for that matter, is a greater expert than I am. So could I ask her to make a comment on that, please? Christine? Thank you.
Thank you. In practice, when we've been dealing with infrastructure led by the community, we're increasingly finding that we are dealing with more organisations than just the parish council, and we have widened our scope in order to make sure that we have included others. So I'm sure that will be appropriate, and it is actually what has been happening in practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Otten.
Thank you. Yes, I'm interested to read at paragraph 38, spending outside each council's geographical area is acceptable. So I'd like a bit of an explanation on that a bit, but also the reverse of that. Is there a possibility that neighbouring councils, I know not all of them do have Sill, will be able to actually, we would be able to access money from neighbouring councils. My other question is where it says maintenance is not eligible, but would there be a conversation about that? Because it may well be, if a village hall, for example, boiler's packed up, and they want to replace it with an air source or something similar, I wouldn't classify that as maintenance. I would classify that as a new project. And just being slightly pedantic, somewhere here it says churches are, where did I see that, Christine? Churches are eligible for Sill. I'm not aware that we have a significant, yeah, there it is, 33, a significant number of other, if you like, religious buildings in the district, but I think we should not feel that they would be excluded. So I think we need to slightly reword that. Thank you.
That's to the professional lead, key sites and infrastructure, please.
Thank you. Yes, in Table 2 of the Sill Expenditure Framework, that sets out the parameters against which spend outside of geographical boundaries of Babergh and Mid-Suffolk can happen, subject to certain criteria. And that's all about the fact that if we are spending outside of our boundary, we don't expect to pay for all the infrastructure, but we will do collaborative spend, proportionate, all the things that you would expect to see. And answering the first question, yes, we do think it's a two-way street, and that we should be able to start conversations, and we have done both with Ipswich Borough and with West Suffolk about infrastructure which we feel could well be put under pressure in our respective districts where growth is happening close to the boundary, and Thurston Rail is one example of that, and conversations are happening now. In terms of repair and maintenance, the reason why this has been ruled out from the Sill Expenditure Framework is simply because we collect Sill for new growth, and we need to be able to address the infrastructure that comes with servicing that new growth. So it was a key principle that was put in place. It doesn't rule out tangible betterment or additionality. So in the scenario that the councillor mentioned, if you were doing something which was a betterment or it had additionality by going from an old boiler, old style, to something which was greener, then that would be something that would be classed as eligible for Sill. And I think the last point was about churches, and it was something that the joint member panel at one of the reviews debated in detail and felt that churches should not be excluded from the proposal. And we did have an ambitious project, not in Mid-Suffolk, but in Babergh, where there was a failing village hall, and they brought part of their church that needed an upgrade into better use, and now the community use that church rather than the failing village hall. The reason that the village hall was failing was because the floor could not be walked on and it was unsafe.
With respect, Christine, that's not, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, I think the wording should say something like religious buildings, you know, as opposed, because churches implies that it was Church of England or whatever. I know we probably don't have a, you know, other, but there may well be other instances. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if the second one might be more related to our next item, but they do sort of overlap. My first question is about the infrastructure delivery plan or infrastructure list, or whatever it happens to be called, because I noticed in the report it says we're going to review the spend on the funding statement and the delivery plan, and alongside how things are going. Now, that delivery plan is dated 2020, and I wondered when, how, and if it gets reviewed, and whether we influence what goes on that infrastructure list. That was my first question. The other question is about the potential for the pilot schemes on the LCWIP to receive some Sill funding, which is why I'm not sure if it's goes against the next item or not. And we talk about some proactive working on some pilot schemes to get the LCWIP getting some results, which I think is fantastic. But I'm a bit concerned about whether we have enough resource to do that pro-action, or whether we are relying on parishes and other groups to come forward with their the schemes they'd like to be in our pilot project for Sill funding. Thank you. And if that second question is more on the next item agenda, I'm quite happy to do it again then.
Thank you, and that's to the professional lead, key sites and infrastructure, and I'll let you deal with the second question, how you please.
Thank you. The infrastructure delivery plan and the infrastructure list, which is part of the infrastructure funding statement, they are inextricably linked. We have started work on an update to this at present, and we are walking forward with that with our infrastructure providers and with all the people that we normally liaise with. I think I picked up the fact that you were asking, can you influence, I can't pronounce my words today, sorry. Can you influence what is on the list? I think I have to emphasise that in both cases, they are evidence-based documents which come forward looking at growth and trying to understand what capacity there is in the system to support the infrastructure and what we need to do about that in order to make sure that we have the right amount of school extensions, the right amount of projects for waste that will deal with the consequence of doing growth. In both documents, we do have a provision in there that says for community-led development, we will allow those to be brought forward in the way that the Sill Expenditure framework allows us to do. But I do have to stress that influencing projects when it's based on evidence linked to growth proposals is probably not something that we can easily do. In terms of the cycling and walking initiative, the joint member panel were very keen to put forward a measure which would allow us to bring forward some costed schemes, understand better the methodology for how we deal with that, to get some of the schemes which have been identified through both councils, LCWIPs, out and done. And I am working collaboratively with our sustainable officer, Catherine, in terms of looking at what can be brought forward, and we have been discussing how we achieve that for schemes which are very close to Ipswich with that modal shift project, and how we take that forward. So that work is already happening, but it is a pilot arrangement, and we are expecting to bring back the results of that to the joint member panel to see how we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, would you like to come back, Councillor Mansell?
Could I just come back on that? Thank you for your answer. On the subject of the LCWIP pilot projects that you're looking at on the sort of Ipswich fringe, are the members of the wards involved being informed about that, that they've got some schemes within their area that are being brought forward as pilot schemes? Thank you.
Thank you. There is one scheme that we are working on in respect of Babergh, where we are already engaged with a community group, and they are aware that we are trying to bring that scheme forward, and that is one of the pilot schemes that we're looking at in the Ipswich modal shift project. So yes, we are doing that.
Are there any in Mid-Suffolk?
We're certainly looking forward to bringing forward some schemes for Mid-Suffolk. We have the LCWIP for both areas, and we will be just selecting some projects to bring forward with both councils. And as you know, we're already fully and heavily engaged with Suffolk County Council in terms of Woolpit and Elmswell and the walking and cycling initiative to link them both. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's Councillor Eburn. If there's no further questions after Councillor Eburn, we'll move on to debate.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got two questions, if I may. Firstly, on page 121, towards the bottom, we refer to the need for getting quotes and the time frame for which a quote can be held. And the review suggested we shorten that from 6 months to 4 months. A project in my ward, the builder has said we will hold a valid quote for 14 days. So that 4 months, I'm sorry, is no good. So could you please advise what will happen in that instance, and can we have some kind of thing where there's, say, a contingency or something? Because, you know, as we referred to on the previous item, supplier costs, construction costs and so on are just going up all the time, and they can't keep them for 4 months. Thank you. My second question is that according to the Council's developer database, we've currently got £18.8 million sat in the strategic Sill pot. And I'm wondering if within the communications we could just put out more information about what that 18 million is going to be spent on in the future, because I think parishes and so on are keen to see that when they have development in their areas, that money is accumulating, and they're keen to see how that's being spent, not what it's been spent on past, but what it is going to be spent on, because obviously they're getting the development right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and that's to the professional lead, key sites and infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as the 4-month quote is concerned, yes, I would entirely agree. At the moment, with rising infrastructure costs and material costs, then holding any quotes for any extended period of time is not going to happen. So what we've agreed to do in terms of practice is to update quotes as we go forward with the assessment of projects, and to check in as one of the last things that we would do before we bring any sort of project before Cabinet for Cabinet to consider, so that we do have a timely and most updated quote. In terms of how will we approach infrastructure going forward, yes, we do have money in Mid-Suffolk in the order that you've stated. You will see in your papers that we are talking about getting 5-year work plans together with all of our infrastructure providers, which is quite a bold move, but it will allow us to budget and forecast and make sure that we can afford the infrastructure coming forward. There are waste projects that we are talking about which are in the order of 3 to 5 million. We already have a rail project that we're working on which will be much, much more than that. So when you are talking about the big ticket items from an infrastructure point of view, they are very costly. I had a count up the other day and I think there were 45 emerging projects for Mid-Suffolk, which ranged from projects within our own district to cross-boundary projects to community projects, as well as working with our infrastructure providers. Yes, I think we will have a plan going forward about how that money is spent, and we also want to be talking to our parishes about how they can contribute and help make those schemes come forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a single question. This agenda item applies across the 2 districts and we are discussing it.
I'm not sure if that's, yeah, and I'll pass that over to the, pass that over to the professional lead, key sites and infrastructure.
Thank you. Obviously the meeting at Babergh didn't take place, but we are considering the Sill Expenditure Framework results of the 4th review tonight. I understand that the next time Babergh can consider the 4th review results will actually be on the 20th of September. I've thought about this hard, and we are going to do a workaround with Babergh bids in that we will take forward any need to enhance community bids as acceptable exceptions to the current framework. And by considering this tonight, it gives the team and I a lot more confidence about how we can take forward existing bids that we had in the last bid round in May, which are still as yet undetermined. And I believe we had 14 of those, and we also have a few more on top. So Cabinet we are going to Cabinet in September for both councils, and we will then be going to Cabinet again in November to try and catch up with whatever bids we have that need a bit more development in order to be taken through. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, sorry, this is really a question for clarification. And I thought for a moment actually that Councillor Mellon was going to ask it. But my question is, can we as Mid-Suffolk validly vote on a recommendation that reads that Babergh and Mid-Suffolk agree, or Babergh and Mid-Suffolk approve? It seems to me that it should not include both councils' names in there.
Pass you over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. For the voting tonight, we will be voting for Mid-Suffolk. If there was a need for Babergh's schemes to come forward earlier, we could, of course, use our urgent provisions for decisions out of meetings to take that. But you are your own sovereign council, so you will be approving your bids tonight.
Thank you very much. Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for your introduction to the Sill and explanation. Very briefly, you mentioned the PIPs. I think some clarification is needed for parish councillors with how parish infrastructure plans relate to the Sill bids. I find with my parish council almost getting into a chicken and egg situation where they can't make the Sill bid because they don't possess the PIP, and one doesn't necessarily precede the other. The parish infrastructure plan develops in the course of preparing the infrastructure bid. So I'd appreciate some clarification to parish councils about the relevance and the significance of an existing parish infrastructure plan, or whether that could be identified in the course of preparing a Sill bid. So.
Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, I'll do my best, and of course I will refer the detail of that to Christine, if I may. But am I right, Christine, that in order to make a bid for Sill, the actual content of that bid does not have to have been part of a parish infrastructure plan in the first place? That it's the parish infrastructure plan is a bit of a wish list, but it doesn't stop a different item coming up at the drop of a hat that isn't on the PIP, but yet it doesn't preclude it being asked for or requested as a Sill application. Is that all? I mean, does that answer that question?
That answers it exactly, but I think this needs to be really stressed to parish councils, because you see the PIP as in the context of a Sill bid and think they look around, what's our PIP?
I think, Councillor Warboys, if I move to debate now...
Sorry,
and if you
I'm
want
having
to,
a conversation.
If you want to make that point in debate, you can be first on the list for debate, because we are straying into debate. So if we call that the end of the questions and we'll move into debate, who would like to start?
Well, that's...
Councillor Warboys.
Okay, well, I think just to sort of try and continue what I was saying is that the significance of the PIP or lack of significance of the PIP really needs to be stressed to parish councils in the course of the inviting applications for Sill bids. With that sort of recommendation, as it like, in your communications to parish councils, I'd be very happy to support your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, as part of the debate, just sort of amplify the issue about there being two councils in the proposal. That surely cannot legally be correct, because if we agree to say yes, we're agreeing that Babergh should agree this framework. I've not been elected to Babergh. No one in this room has. So we should not speak on behalf of that council. And incidentally, if they were to reject this, are they rejecting it on Mid Suffolk's behalf against our wishes, which I hope we'll agree today? So I think there's an element of housekeeping there that I would certainly like to see amended before I say yes to this. Just want to thank the team for, as it were, the sort of working end of the Sill arrangements, the sort of sharp end of it. Thank you for all the work you do. It is an immensely complex area, and I'm always impressed with the detail and how all this stuff gets bolted together, and sometimes how the rules are interpreted and to meet sometimes really crushingly tight deadlines to deliver some of these schemes that sometimes change almost at the last minute. So thank you for that. I'll certainly be voting for this. But can I just make a plea to those sitting on the benches opposite? You're about to have a vote in a different chamber about government policy. And while government's quite fluid and making all sorts of promises at the moment, can I just make a little bit of a plea that you use all of the political strength you've got to actually look at the front end of the Sill charging framework and get the government to amend it? Because frankly, within a few hundred yards of where I live, there are 40 market homes about to be built, and they will all pay Sill. But there's 20 affordables on that site that won't pay a penny, on top of the 20 self-build homes that are around me that also haven't paid a penny. Now, I can't understand how only the 40 market homes will generate the need for payment for infrastructure that the other 40 homes won't generate the demand for. Because I know pretty much well that those affordable homes and those self-build homes will generate the need for play equipment and all that infrastructure.
So I'm not suggesting they pay perhaps the same amount, perhaps it could be a different amount, but I still think the principle should be, if this is a development tax, which frankly, that's what it is, it should then be a development tax and not people, not let just some people off 100%, because it does actually skew some of the figures, and it might mean that if more people contributed, the overall figure could actually be less and promote more sustainable growth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. And we'll just go to the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office for an update on something that's come up.
Thank you, Chair. So just for clarity, tonight you will be voting that Mid-Suffolk councils approve the framework and that Mid-Suffolk agree the Sill expenditure. That was probably an interactive recommendation, but it's actually, as I said before, you are the Sovereign Council, so it's tonight, it's just you approving that, and you're not approving anything for Babergh, just to be clear.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that clarification. It would be helpful if we'd have had a similar clarification on the CIFCO report, which we weren't allowed to discuss, despite being able to discuss this one. I've got a couple of points to make, though. Firstly, Christine Thurlow, it's great to see you at the briefing recently, and great to have a really good briefing that unfortunately wasn't as well attended as it could have been, but I think we all appreciated it, and it was good to have that. I think for briefings in future, it would be great to see, obviously, more people there. And it's good because we can ask questions, and the team are extremely helpful in answering those questions. And I think the issue with this is it's quite complex, and you've got parishes and community groups trying to put bids in and trying to work out where they're getting their funding on and so forth. And it involves the Sill team, but it also involves the communities and grants team. So we're kind of involving quite a few people. And the more kind of information, but kind of concise information we can get, I think is good. And I think particularly to involve parishes, and I say parishes broadly, as in all those groups within parishes, in those briefings would be really, really helpful. I'll be supporting this, but I'll just make a plea for sort of good briefings, as it were, and concise briefings that cover all of the factors within this, to make it easier for those communities to put bids in and to actually mitigate some of the effects of development that they have in their areas. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm certainly supportive of this, and I just wanted to point out, I believe I'm right in saying that Mid-Suffolk and perhaps Babergh at the same time, we were the original councils in Suffolk that adopted the Sill, going back, I think, for, was it 5-6 years? And there are plenty of councils in Suffolk that still don't even have it. And all I would say is I think the way it can help with this funding, and I agree with you, Andrew, it is a tax on development, mate, no bones about it. So in the end, the consumer pays. I do think it should be spread to all houses, maybe at a differential rate and so on, because clearly people live in homes, they're all going to benefit. So somehow to address that in future would be worth looking at. But I do congratulate the team on this. It's a complicated area. We were, I suppose, some of the first to start with this, and it is an evolutionary process. Getting greater clarity for how it can be done, I think, is very, very commendable. And if I declare an interest with my other hat on, the new police and fire station in Stowmarket had a considerable benefit from that, and that's exactly what people want. So, you know, if it spreads out to sports clubs, community groups and so on, which it's there intended to help them, well, that's really good, because it will make Mid-Suffolk an even more attractive and a wonderful place to live and work in. So well done to everybody involved. I think we're all very appreciative of the work that's gone into this, and look forward to further reviews and augmenting the process as time goes on. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I, as a member of the joint panel, would firstly like to thank Christine and her team, because an awful lot of work goes into this project, and I, although it's quite an intense session, and we had lots of meetings in a short space of time, I welcome the opportunity to be able to ask questions and try and get my head around it, because it is a very complicated field. But I'd just like to make a couple of comments on the changes. I really welcome bit about increasing the catchment areas for some of the education, transport and health hubs and things like that, because we need to remember that those health hubs don't just serve one village, they serve a huge great catchment area, and we shouldn't really just be taking the ring fence money from that one village where the health hub happens to be. We need to look at where all the patients are coming from and make sure, because all of that development in all the catchment area will all have an impact on those hubs. And I'd also like to make a comment about the fact that yes, we do need to make sure that this Sill money that we're collecting gets spent. As Councillor Passmore has pointed out, we were one of the first councils to go for the Sill arrangement, and our money is accruing in the Sill pot. And we are, I think it's great that we should be encouraging just to be spending this money. What concerns me is that the money is being collected because the infrastructure is needed as the houses are built. And those houses are built and we still haven't got the infrastructure. And yet we all know that the money that is collected is not likely to be enough for all the infrastructure that is needed from some of the developments. So on the one hand, we want it spent now, whilst when we've got the need for the infrastructure, but we do have to bear in mind that all of these big ticket items like rail crossings in Thurston and schools are going to cost an awful lot of money, and we need to make sure we've got enough for those big items, but it would be great to have them in a really timely manner, because we need them now. We don't want them in 10 years' time when we've probably got another 800 homes that need to feed that railway crossing or whatever. So yes, it is good that we need to encourage to spend, and we certainly need to be encouraging our parishes to be using their neighbourhood Sill. You know, they're getting that money. The villages that have got the developments are getting their neighbourhood Sill, and it needs to be spent. And then we can all show that the residents that, you know, we're getting this money and we are doing something in our communities to make sure that there is some mitigation for all of that extra development. So thank you. I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of points I wanted to make, and I think actually some of it naturally flows on quite nicely from what Councillor Mansell has said. So I think obviously just to kind of look at this in the round, one of the great advantages of Sill is that it does give us that additional degree of flexibility, of discretion about exactly how we use this money that is, you know, generated by developments in our district. And I think if we're looking at what this framework is recommending that we change, it is enabling us to do even more of that in terms of that flexibility and discretion, taking into account the new priorities and the strategies and the focus that we have as a district. You know, be that from the wellbeing strategy, from the LCWIP, you know, enabling us to invest in more open spaces, more arts and museums, and more sort of green infrastructure. So I think that's a really welcome element of part of this, and I completely agree with Councillor Mansell. It's very important that we make sure that this is done in a broader, collaborative way, both in district and without. And the professional lead for key sites and infrastructure has already given the example of Thurston Rail as a very good example of that. I'm sure there will be others across the district as well. So I think in the whole I absolutely welcome this, and I think this is a really important step forward for us in managing development and in actually investing in new facilities and new betterment, I think is the correct word for residents in our community. So I shall certainly be voting in favour of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you. As another member of the Working Party, I certainly will be supporting this and welcome the document, and would like to thank Christine and the rest of the team for the effort they've put in. It's interesting, this Working Party, the effort of reconciling some quite widely divergent views is always interesting and amusing, but has been done successfully, I think, so far. The point I just wished to make really was the issue of we need to spend the money to gain the benefit from it. One of the prime set of people who are not doing very much is parish councils. There are a couple of issues there, I think. One, that they have some difficulty in understanding all the details. It is a complex subject, and we've agreed some improved communication, which will be good to see. Another issue that I suppose I ran into this week, probably not for the first time, some small parish councils are very concerned that they have to raise cash to carry out feasibility studies or design studies before they can put in a Sill bid. And I certainly have one small one that is quite concerned that for a modification to a village hall, which is hardly gigantic, they have a severe risk of actually going bankrupt, and certainly of taxing their financial limits. So I think although this is a good move forward, there are still some issues that the Working Party needs to discuss, possibly for revision a subsequent round, recognising that while we don't want to cover vast amounts of feasibility studies and finish up delivering nothing for any of them, there is an issue there for small bodies, small village hall committees, etc., in finding cash to carry out those studies, and those bodies may not be in possession of neighbourhood Sill themselves. They may be looking at taking advantage of Sill that's been generated in the wider area. So with those comments, I'll certainly support this recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I absolutely welcome the introduction of Sill. You know, having spent quite a number of years working with the Section 106 variation of it, getting money out of developers and so on, and because it offers much greater flexibility to alleviate, you know, long-standing problems in some cases. If you're going to make that problem worse, well, we can spend some money to make it better instead, and all that's been great. And I think it's also the reviews and the fourth review. The reviews are very welcome because they are regular opportunities for the panel to actually listen to what members and even parishes through members are saying, and adapting it, and you know that's been great as well. Especially the point about that highway projects used to be rigorously excluded, and now in various ways that they are included, and that's great as well. I think the problem, and I certainly support what's put forward, absolutely, but the problem I think we have, particularly as elected councillors, especially as district councillors, and especially those of us on the planning committees, is that the public perception is that the shortcomings, and people say, well, you know, we're getting more houses, and where's the infrastructure, and where's the infrastructure? And they will talk about, particularly they will mean the roads, and of course, well, we can't actually deal with that directly, necessarily, or not through Sill. And I think even more particularly and difficult is, all right, there's a big pot of money. I was amazed to see quite how large the pot now is. And yeah, we desperately need that being spent now as the houses are filled up with people. And particularly I want to refer to the health sector. And the health sector seems to say, well, we can't get the doctors. So basically very little happens to address the fact that there are more and more people. And I just don't know how exactly we can persuade the NHS in its current structure to, really to get stuck into this better. And it was good to hear from the officer about the, engagement together with the five-year working plans. Good. Some of that needs to turn into action, which the public can see happening
30 seconds.
Sooner rather than later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. Two completely separate points I'd like to make. The first is I think we need to find a way to get community groups in villages together, because there are some villages, some parishes, they've got quite large sums of money in their Sill reserves. And if we can find a way, I mean, I know as we can do our best as ward members, but with the help of officers and with promoting Sill, we can get the people within the parishes together. So that, and I think there's a real value to a PIP in those sorts of situations, because it makes the different community groups plan the future of the village. To leave it to the parish council, I think will ensure that the projects that get put forward and get Sill funds will be the parish council projects. They may not be the village projects. So I think we need to find a way to do that. And the other thing we need to be concerned about is that in some instances, a Sill-funded strategic project leads to the need for other infrastructure. For instance, a new school may well lead to a need for pedestrian provision, for cycle provision, might even lead to the need for road improvements. So we must make sure that we're not using our Sill money to help with one infrastructure solution and causing an infrastructure problem. And I think that's something we need to bear in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments for debate? I'll go to Councillor Byrne now to sum up.
Well, that's a big ask, Chairman, because we've covered quite a lot of ground here. I hope most of it's, well, at least we can all look back on it in the recording and get the message. I hope too that Christine's been taking a few notes, because we'll need to be discussing this at some length afterwards. But I take your points. I think they're all very well made. This is an amazing amazing scheme that does produce great results, I think. Yes, it would be good to spend more. Okay, we need bids to make that happen, and to make the bids we need the communities to understand that they're there to be made and that they can make them. So the publicity needs improving. I take Councillor Field's points very much to heart, but I think we can all agree, it sounds to me as though we're all agreeing that these amendments that we've made, these changes that we've brought about to the scheme are a step in the right direction, and I hope you will all support them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, and I'd like to take this to the vote now. So I'll ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue for councillors to cast their vote. Chair, that is unanimously for.
Thank you very much. That's carried. Now, at this point, we're an hour and a half into the meeting. I don't know if anybody wants to have a 5-minute break. I can see a nod. I'll take one nod as we'll take a 5-minute break. So if you could be back in 5 minutes, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. Go on to item 15 now. MC 2216, Babergh BMSDC, Sustainable Travel Vision and Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, the LCWIP. I'd like to invite Councillor Fleming to introduce paper MC 2216. The recommendations for this are for noting only.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. I'm going to see if I can read my report without my glasses, but I can't. So I'll have to put them on, and you all look a little bit blurry. So that's just how it is. Well, I'm delighted to introduce this paper. I think this LCWIP is just a really exciting document. It's more than a document. It's a whole programme of how we're going to improve transport and health and well-being in the district. The Sustainable Travel Vision and associated LCWIP together represent our approach for promoting and expanding cycling and walking. The vision recognises the value of these modes of transport, and also that residents will still need cars for certain journeys. The intention is to make it easier, safer, and more pleasant for those who already walk and cycle for whatever reasons, and to prompt those who may be considering it to give it a try. The LCWIP is a national government recommended tool promoted by the Department for Transport, which is being taken up by us and by neighbouring councils, as well as the county and in Norfolk. Its key function is to enable potential routes to be prioritised for purposes of assessing their viability and their need and purpose, so that we're ready to bid for funds and enter into partnerships as opportunities arise. The three key outputs of the LCWIP are a prioritised programme of infrastructure improvements, a network plan for walking and cycling, which identifies preferred routes, and a report which sets out the analysis of the routes. The list of routes in our LCWIP reflects a successful consultation held last year that received over 1,800 public responses. That's really impressive. The initial list has been reviewed and assessed based on the DFT scoring mechanism, adjusted slightly to reflect our district's rural landscape, and agreed by a cross-party working group. The prioritisation is subject to reanalysis and potentially to change as new information becomes available. I would like to stress that the LCWIP is and will remain a living, dynamic document, as the schemes within it are examined in more detail. This process will uncover opportunities for funding and support which may have been missed, and it may identify partners that may wish to be involved, such as potential employers or cycling or walking clubs. This is the first version, and my guess is that the list will change quite soon. And finally, the list of schemes is long and the outcome of hope and optimism. However, the difficulties of delivering them are substantial and expensive, and I don't wish to get hopes up to an unreasonable level. All members are encouraged to examine the list and discuss with their parishes and local communities and seek further detail and identify local issues which could help to deliver them. And in conclusion, I would like to thank both the public for their active engagement and officers for their hard work, looking at Catherine there, on this very important project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. We will now move to questions. Would anyone like to ask a question? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Councillor Fleming. Just a quick one. Bearing in mind the previous paper and the fact that putting together the LCWIP is making us in a position where if funding opportunities are available, then we've got the evidence to go for that. Are we going to actually allocate a certain amount of district Sill to the LCWIP project so that we're already prepped for that position? Thank you.
That's to Councillor Fleming.
I think I can say with a reasonable degree of certainty that we aren't allocating funds per se, but that Sill funds will be available on a case-by-case basis. Perhaps I can be corrected by officers on that point.
The Director for Economic Development. Who's going to take this?
Oh, it's Fiona, yeah, sorry.
The Director for Economic Development. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Fleming is correct in that we will not specifically large sum of money allocated from Sill, but more as they come forward. I think the challenge for us is ensuring that we can get schemes to a point where they are suitable for bidding into Sill. So some early feasibility work needs to be done on each of the schemes to ensure that we can make Sill bids.
Any further questions? Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. I've been looking at the list of schemes in Mid-Suffolk. Unfortunately, the link is www.babergh.gov.uk given in the report. Is there not some way that when we publicise this in Mid-Suffolk that we can have a Mid-Suffolk link, not via www.babergh.gov? Because I think we're more likely to get our parishes in Mid-Suffolk to look at it if it's not a Babergh document. So is that something we can sort out, please?
The Sustainable Travel Officer.
Thank you. Yes, that link may have just been used in the Cabinet report, but there is a Mid-Suffolk link to the same Sustainable Travel webpage on the Mid-Suffolk website, and that will be used when we write to our parishes in Mid-Suffolk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further questions? No? Well, we'll move to debate now. Same rules apply. Who would like to start? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Fleming, for this paper, and particularly thank you to the Officer Catherine for all the hard work she's done in this. And I just want to stress that this particular project is one that I'm sure we'll all agree that so many of our communities have got very enthusiastic about, and so many people have responded to the original consultation, which was really heartening to see. And I just think it's beholden now on us to make sure that things happen from it, because I've not, you know, we've had such a lot of questions and interest from the community, so I would really like to see that we can make sure that we take things forward from this. But thank you again, particularly to the officer involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo what Councillor Eburn has said, and clearly this is a project very close to my heart. And I think it is fantastic that we now have an LCWIP, and I'm really hoping that the very fact that we've now got the LCWIP, Catherine's done a lot of work on this, and I think it's great that we are able to access funds, not just through our own Sill funds. And I really think that what we need now, I mean, this is so all-encompassing, because if we can deliver a scheme that, you know, I think we need to actually deliver a scheme that is going to, that we can then use as an example to show the communities what we can do. If we can, I don't know, upgrade a footpath and enable more children to walk to school, it would be just such a fantastic centrepiece of achievement that we are doing something really positive about getting the modal shift, because we all hear complaints about traffic around schools and the parking. Every village has got the same issue about parents parking outside schools. Now, if we can link one of our LCWIP projects that we can actually deliver and enable more people to safely walk to school, we can maybe alleviate some of those other issues. And the other thing that I really hope that we can get out of this project is we can influence planning decisions about sustainable travel and make sure that we have all that connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists from one development to the other, into the town centres, so that we are really enabling people. I mean, I know it's a long shot to get people to change their ways, but if we can just do something small that will actually encourage more people to get out of their cars and walk, it will just be fantastic. So thank you very much for the officers who've worked on this. Thank you very much to all the members of the public who put into that consultation, which was lovely, lovely map-based consultation. I just think the next stage is going to be crucial. We've got to deliver a scheme and we've got to show some difference. So let's hope we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Passmore.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, what a wonderful acronym, an LCWIP. I wondered what that was. I had to check it, but I thought I've had enough acronyms to last me a lifetime, but that's a new one on me. But no, seriously, I think it's a really good idea. All I can say is encouraging certainly children to get on their bike and go to school is a very good idea. It's actually quite good for them. I used to cycle to school 4 miles there and, funnily enough, 4 miles back because I got so fed up with my dad making me late and me getting into trouble and getting into detention because of him. But on a serious point, giving the opportunity for people to do that, not only is it a good thing to do, but it's actually good for the individual to keep them fit and toughen them up. So I think there are other benefits as well. So, but I don't think I'll be getting on a cycle lane all the way from Twate down to Endeavour House, which is about 17, 18 miles and 17 or 18 miles back. But there we are, and certainly not in the heat of the last few days. But no, well done, and thank you very much for doing this. I think we're all right behind it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Any comments? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Fleming, would you like to add anything at this stage?
I'll just say again a big thank you to everyone who's participated in this. And also, I'd like to say this is the beginning. It's by no means a concluded programme. We're starting on something and it's going to go on indefinitely, I hope. And the schemes some of them will take time, so I think it needs patience and dedication to achieve what we all want. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming, and that report was for noting only, so we'll move on to the motions on notice. And Councillor Mellon, would you like to move your motion, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I just may have just a moment at the beginning just to explain, perhaps people were wondering why my question earlier about the CIFCO item. I was just simply trying to clarify that when an item is withdrawn close to a meeting, every member should hear at the same time so that we don't spend too much time reading the papers. But I think that point has now been made and we'll move on. Turning to the motion, Mr. Chairman, we hear a lot in the news about retrofitting at the moment. And I know we all know what this means, making homes more energy efficient by putting in insulation, improving doors and windows, and also installing renewable energy measures, solar panels, maybe a storage battery, perhaps an air source or a ground source heat pump. And while some homes in mid-Suffolk are already well insulated and energy efficient, many are not. And so a big effort is needed over the next few years if we are to meet our country's and our county's aspirations to reach net zero. And of course the wonderful thing about retrofitting is that it achieves multiple objectives. We have warmer homes in winter, cooler homes in summer, and people lifted out of fuel poverty. We have lower carbon dioxide emissions slashed, and everyone on the planet benefits. And also it can create long-lasting and quality green jobs. Now, members will remember, I'm sure, that at last month's council meeting we debated the HRA business plan, which included a 30-year plan for retrofitting our own council houses. This is all well and good, but as we saw, the pace of retrofitting activity is limited by the constraints of the HRA funding model. You know, the money is ring-fenced, as we know, and the government rules limit how much we can borrow. But there are things we can do to shift the balance and increase the rate at which retrofitting happens. And this is where our motion comes in. And it's a simple one. It's encouraging a single idea that working together across a wider area than our two councils brings benefits. The fact is that all councils are in pretty much the same situation. We all need to do retrofitting, and often our council homes are similar types of construction. So there are benefits to be gained by working together, and this is what is currently being done down in Sussex, where 7 councils have got together and have found a way to work collaboratively on this issue, benefiting everyone. So why would we do this? Well, firstly, there are economies of scale. The councils in Sussex are aiming to work on 40,000 homes. Now, this number gives them enormous buying power and economies of scale, driving down the cost for each individual installation, the power of the market at work. Secondly, the collaborative approach means that each individual council does not need to reinvent the wheel. In Sussex, working with experts from the construction industry, with academics and architects, they identified 10 housing archetypes, and for each one, the best measures for improvement. For example, a mid-terrace home built in the 1960s with solid walls might best be improved by fitting external insulation cladding, upgrading the windows and putting PV panels on the roof. A detached bungalow might benefit from a different set of measures. These are just examples, but the point is this: once the best measures for each type of housing have been broadly identified, there is much less individual design work for each property, and work can proceed at a faster pace. Thirdly, a collaborative approach over a wide area means that a consistent and stable supply chain can be established for both materials, skills and people. The renewable sector has really suffered over the years from boom and bust as government support has progressed in and out of various schemes. You know, for a while we had the feed-in tariff scheme, then that went. And it boosted the industry but then tailed off. Then we had the Green Deal, introduced in 2013 and pulled in 2015. A couple of years later we had the Green Homes Grant, which was supposed to improve 600,000 homes, which only reached 47,000 and was withdrawn. So a consistent long-term approach is needed to make the retrofit industry sustainable. And to be honest, this seems to be more likely to come from the bottom up, a local authority-led initiative, than from the regular switches of direction in Westminster. Lastly, the benefits of getting this right for local authority homes can then start to spread to the private sector. If we have people and firms with the right skills, good local suppliers, and the knowledge of what to do for each type of housing, retrofit becomes easier and cheaper for everyone. So to sum up, we think the approach being taken in Sussex, the so-called Lewis model, is a good one, and we bring this motion to Council and the same proposal to Babergh later in September to kickstart the process. Let's get our officers having a look at it, start talking to other local authorities and see if we can get the ball rolling on a similar scheme here in Suffolk. I have had discussions with Councillor Morley, who has proposed an amendment which we are minded to accept in order to get cross-party support, provided that we do get reporting back to this council. We've all seen the realities of climate change this week in the record temperatures we have experienced. Climate scientists are telling us that we need to act now. Time is short. The opportunity is there to make a difference. So I commend this motion and ask for members to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mellon. I believe Councillor Eburn, you wish to second.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to second the motion, but I'd reserve my right to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And there was an amendment mentioned there. Would you like to speak on the amendment, Councillor Morley?
I agree with the main premise of the first paragraph, and while Mid-Suffolk has nowhere like 40,000 houses in our HRA, it's closer to 3,500, but my feeling is that Mid-Suffolk is not the best place for this to be promulgated. As I'm sure you're all aware, we have the Suffolk Public Sector Leaders Group, which is set up and works across Suffolk on initiatives that cover the whole of Suffolk. And this strikes me as fitting really nicely into that category. So the Suffolk Climate Change, Energy and Environment Board is the proper body which sits underneath SPSL to actually discuss this rather than it being a mid-Suffolk task. So what I would actually like to amend the paragraph to read is the first sentence of the second paragraph to become, this council agrees to ask the Housing Task Group, which is a subgroup of SCIB, to start dialogue with other local authorities and external stakeholders to investigate if a similar project could be initiated in Suffolk to improve the pace of retrofitting. So that's just the first sentence of that second paragraph. Pardon? Thank you.
Sorry, is there a problem?
No, I'm sorry, I think I missed something from Councillor Mansell.
I just made the point that it's the only sentence in the second paragraph. It's not just the first sentence, it is the second
Right, okay,
sentence.
well, thank you very much for that. Do we have a seconder for the, Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second Councillor Morley's amendment, and if there is a debate, then I would like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mellon, do you accept the amendment?
Back to the council.
Councillor Morley, would you like to?
I'm not sure of the exact process because it will come back to SPSL, but I don't know whether monitoring this or Arthur, whether you can help. It will certainly come back to SPSL, and I'm happy to bring it back here afterwards.
Are you happy? Would you the Chief Executive?
There we go. I was just going to make the same point as the leader, which is we can bring it back through the leader's announcements or through a variety of mechanisms, be that an all-member briefing, whatever's most appropriate. We'll make sure councillors are aware.
In that case, I'm happy to accept the amendment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eburn, do you accept the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd accept the amendment, provided we can get feedback to this chamber here on and how that is progressing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That becomes a substantive motion. So we'll now go into debate. Who would like to start? Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the when we talked about the HRA previously, I was expressing particular frustration about the fact that we couldn't actually use the general fund to help in various ways. And the Section 151 officer did undertake at that time to have a look at ways in which we might use the general fund for such things as external environmental improvements, sort of landscaping and that kind of thing, which was being spent from the HRA, but could legitimately be taken from general fund. And so I think in this context, I'd be, it's unfortunate that the 151 officer is not here, but I think I wanted to, repeat that question and the need to look at that within this discussion as well. And so I don't suppose Councillor Whitehead's got an answer to hand, but anyway, I bring that question back for an answer sometime, please. And we may be able to help get projects like this done. I do wonder whether the substance of the motion is something that must come. The money, any costs must come from within the HRA. But again, that's probably 151 questions that we can hear about subsequently, perhaps as a sort of written answer or something.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. I welcome this motion, and I welcome the whatever it was called, long-winded name about something to do with the environment on the Suffolk Public Sector Leaders Group, or whatever they're called. Lots of acronyms there, but I can't remember what they all were. I'd just like to make a comment on what the Chief Executive said a few minutes ago, when he said that, yes, it would be reported back, possibly through the leaders' announcements. My issue with the leaders' announcements is that we're not allowed to ask questions or discuss anything. So I would really like that when this does come back, it is in some forum where we are allowed to ask questions and we are allowed to discuss it and question things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of points I think I'd make. So, as Councillor Morley sort of indicated, we're on this side of the chamber happy to support this motion. I think fundamentally the principle behind this makes perfect sense. I think one of our strengths as a council is that we actually are very good at our broader partnership working across the system, whether that's through SPSL, Shared Revenues Partnership, Shared Legal Services, Gateway to Home Choice, etc., etc. And I think fundamentally, given the challenges of the HRA, I think working more collaboratively with the rest of our partners in terms of retrofitting social housing is fundamentally a good idea. One just point I will make, though, which is part of the reason why we've amended this ever so slightly to omit the researching of this motion, is in the time that it was published, or between the time it was published and now, our officers have done so. And, well, they couldn't find much, but it did cause them a little bit of confusion. So there's apparently, it seems, nothing on the Lewis Council website about this model. The only reference they can find is from a blog post by a Lewis councillor on something called Green World. But what they found is that this relates to something called the Greater Brighton Retrofit Task Force. And we're assuming it's the same thing. It references the same number of houses, the same number of district councils. Now, apparently, according to what they found, this was set up on the 20th of July last year, was due to present an initial report back in the spring of this year, but hasn't done so. And the reason I want to just make this point is I think it's worth just setting expectations very clear about what it is we're looking into, and therefore what potential outcomes we may get. So if I just quote from the officer who did some looking into this on our behalf, he said that I haven't been able to find anything that says how this money has been pooled, its governance, etc. I don't even know if this £1 billion, which is the figure quoted, is in the pot now or is a commitment over a number of years. The claim is that amount of money that they can generate through economies of scale. But again, I haven't found anything that puts a number to those savings. So I think it's worth just clarifying that, because while we're happy with the principle of this motion, and what I will just say is I think the approach as a whole is absolutely fine, but we must be really clear that what we're actually doing is just looking into this broader approach and this collaboration through SPSL and its subsidiary bodies, because we can't research the Lewis model because we can't find anything that says it exists, and we can't research really this task force because it hasn't done anything. So I think we're happy with the principle, but I don't think there's anything that we can find that provides more detail about this than what is in the motion. So I think what we're saying is we're happy to look into this further, but we should be really clear about what exactly we hope to gain from this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody? Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just a few words. I'll be supporting this motion. I think we all know that urgent action on reducing the energy use in homes is needed. So I think it's important that our leader encourages other leaders to make it clear that this is urgent and that it isn't something just to be put on the shelf. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion, unsurprisingly, because we actually have to get this moving, and it has to get moving pretty sharpish, because we're coming from a long way back. We probably should have been doing this about 6-7 years ago, probably a decade ago. That said, we are where we are, or where we choose to be, and we choose to be right here, right now, and we can actually do something about this, and we need to. Some people might ask, well, why us? Why do we need to do this? If you go back to the foundation of district councils as why we're here, does anyone know why we're actually here? We were here and we were set up to deal with sewage, because there was rampant development, all sorts of different standards on how you got the nasty stuff out of houses and new factories, etc. And no one was prepared to take responsibility for it. And there wasn't an honest broker that could pull the funds from various developers to connect up to proper sewage works. That's where local authorities came from in the first instance. And it's probably a pretty good metaphor for what we need to do now. Yeah, they were in the nasty stuff then if they didn't get it right, and I think we're in the nasty stuff now if we don't get this right. And who else is going to do it? Because it needs to be done. At the current level, we do fund retrofitting some people's homes in a year. In the whole of Suffolk, we do about 300 homes a year. From what is called a green levy on the electricity bill. That's highly likely to disappear in the next few months, according to what I'm seeing in the media. So even that, 300 homes a year in the whole of Suffolk, could well be challenged. At that current rate, to deliver all the homes we need to deliver in Suffolk that are in this sector, it probably takes us 100 years. We haven't got 100 years. We need this to pull the expertise, and a lot of that expertise is in this council. We also need to make sure that we train a labour force to do this. We desperately need to get this done. So anything that initiates that first step needs to have all speed and all luck, frankly. So I will be supporting this motion, if nothing else, to make sure that we don't end up in the nasty stuff later down the line. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fleming.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to briefly explain why I will be abstaining on this motion, whereas I, as you probably know, support the sentiment behind it. We've had a number of different suggestions and motions brought by our very well-meaning opposition, but I think the problem is they don't all come together in a coherent fashion, and they really need to. And I realise there are a lot of different groups and organisations within the county all trying to do more or less the same thing. For instance, the Suffolk Environment Cabinet members group is looking at a similar programme, Suffolk, to be built into a Suffolk-wide design policy. And we're looking at this, and we need to look at this coherently, and I don't see this as being the right avenue for doing what I think we all would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eppingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this motion is deserving of our support, but I do think that we need to be a little bit careful because Councillor Mellon talks about the loose model, and in my experience, a model is something that someone has created, executed, tried out, and proven how it works. The loose model is not one of those things. I quote the councillor from Sussex saying, "The loose model is an ambitious plan." Well, that's great. We are about doing things here in Mid-Suffolk and in Suffolk generally. And whilst I agree that we should go ahead and investigate the way that we can pull resources to do this, I would just remind everyone that actually we are doing our bit in Mid-Suffolk in terms of what we can do in terms of renovating our properties. But yes, let's go ahead and actually let's develop a Suffolk model that works, and then Lewes can follow us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eburn, you've reserved your right to speak. Would you like to say anything further before Councillor Mellon sums up?
I would, Chair. Thank you very much. Firstly, if anyone would like some phone numbers of people to call to talk about this, I'm happy to provide them. But I think, yes, we want to do our bit. And often we hear in this council about ambition. And we often hear about Mid-Suffolk setting an example and Mid-Suffolk leading the way. And we often get up and say with pride, from whichever side of the chamber, that we have, others have followed our lead. Here we are again. Here's an idea. Others can follow our lead. Others can help and work on it. If we produce a Suffolk model, all well and good. But I think ultimately we have an ambition to see our council's housing stock improved for our tenants' benefits, more comfortable to live in, cheaper bills, and better future-proofed. But we all know the constraints of the housing budget within the rules set by government, and this means it's difficult to achieve, and could take many years. Additionally, we know that there is a need for more homes in general to be insulated, to be updated, and can we not help enable this? Private sector tenants, for example, how are we helping them in this arena? So what we're looking at is looking into something that is happening, working with other councils, achieving economies of scale, using local suppliers, utilising low carbon materials, and improving homes. So if you just look at the number of homes, just taking council homes per se, we've got about 3,200 in mid-Suffolk out of 41,000 homes. So just looking at council homes, that's about 8%. In Suffolk, there are 350,000 homes. 8% of that is about £28,000, 28,000 homes. That is a significant number, and that is just the sort of social housing elements. It doesn't take into account the private rented sector, those people with homes that might want to improve them, and have just been looking for something, some kind of scheme somewhere where you can actually use local suppliers, where they're confident, something that's backed by their local council, not necessarily backed with finance, but backed in terms of we've looked into this, we've found suppliers, we've used low carbon materials, here you are, off you go. And I think we can be the inspiration for a massive impact across Suffolk. So yes, what it does need is a dialogue across different parts of the county, and we really do need to kind of get on with this and do something. And this is just something positive to look into. With regards to the work that the Suffolk Climate Change, Environment and Energy Board are doing, they've got 4 projects on the go to do with housing at the last minutes I was able to find. So, and this isn't one of those. So other areas have got 7, 8 projects. Let's ask them to have a look at this. And thank you, Councillor Morley, for your amendment. And I think it would be useful for them to look at this. And I look forward to hearing back positively. And I hope that you will all support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eburn. Councillor Mellon, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The area of retrofitting is such an important area if we are to meet our environmental ambitions that we've all signed up to. It is an area that needs innovation. In fact, it's crying out for innovation, and we've brought forward this proposal as something we could look at. I do hear Councillor Richardson's caution, but that is why the motion is in the area of investigation, looking at the ideas and seeing what merit there is. I'm disappointed that some councillors do not feel they can fully support the motion. In actual fact, the ask is pretty small. As Councillor Ekping-Yong has said, we are doing our bit. This motion simply brings forward an idea that could help us to do more, and I do commend it to members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue. If you could cast your votes.
Sorry, for some reason the voting facility isn't opening, but I'm voting in favour of the motion.
Chair, that is 25, 4 and 3 abstentions.
Thank you very much, and that's carried. So we'll go on to item 18, councillor appointments. Are there any changes to placings? No, no. Okay, so with that, I'll inform you that the date of the next meeting is Thursday, the 22nd of September at 5:30, and I'll finish the meeting at 7:45. Thank you very much, everyone.